Before we begin, welcome back to the show. Now, I'm on a mission to spread these conversations to as many people as I can. If you could do me the small favor of clicking the follow button on Spotify or clicking subscribe on YouTube, it does make a massive difference in helping me bring on bigger guests who provide even more value. So thank you and enjoy the episode. Boris Walter, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks.
The first question I was going to ask is, why do you think people love you so much? Like, you're the most requested guest. Because I find it amazing because they obviously don't know you personally.
Yeah,
like they don't know the intimate details of your life. I even find myself like, I love Boris, but I'm like, well, I don't really know the ins and outs in the like granular detail of his life.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you think people resonate with your
What a question.
your work?
I love that question. What do they love about my work or about me?
That's what I mean. It's
Okay.
like there's almost like a merging between the two, but there is a distinction at times, right? Like,
Yeah.
or is there?
Look, I think when the work that I do, right, for starters, it requires quite a deep level of intimacy. And you'll learn this in psychotherapy and psychology, but you're creating attachments with people. Like it's a lot of the clients that you'll meet, especially in clinical work, they don't have people around them that they can trust. What we consider normal, say having an authentic conversation from the heart and having trust and someone that listens to you, allows you to finish your sentence and without barging in, inserting their own ideas, we consider that quite normal maybe. But for a lot of the people that come and see you as a psychotherapist or a clinician, it's actually very rare. And you might actually be the only person in their life that could actually demonstrate healthy attachment or healthy conversation and attention and love, essentially. And so that's one dimension of why these bonds are there. But because I've learned within myself, I think, to be authentic in that engagement rather than rehearsed, this is what it looks like to look authentic or look like you care. It was more of a willingness to know that you had to actually embody a lot of the ethics and love that you want to invite them to in this world. So a lot of the philosophies and teachings had to be embodied. And I remember that moment where it's like, no, I have to become whatever it is that I'm teaching. And I think I've noticed that across time, the more grounded I am in those ethics and ideas and morality and spiritual teachings, let's say, the more has a gravitational pull that's hard to explain, that people just feel that and sense that. And it's like they want to be around in the same way we were talking earlier about the corporates, just wanting whatever I am to be around their leadership teams. It's hard for them to even explain it, but it's like it seems like I am just a grounded, and in the Enneagram it's number 9 sort of energy, my friend Max would say, but it's this grounded sort of energy that it says the world's okay. And it's not exactly, it's always okay in my mind, but I think throughout my years I've learned to minimize conflict, that because it was chaos for me as a child. So it's like I've learned across time to wear a mask that allows others to feel like everything's okay, but then you get really good at it, and one day hopefully you can actually be authentic rather than just practice and rehearsed. But let's just say, what I'm saying is that there is an energy or a demeanor about me that just says the world's okay, even if I believe it or not, it just sends those signals out. And now that it's more grounded and authentic, it's more felt. And I think I'm just throwing things out there. That's maybe why people like to be around me or talk to me, because they feel a sense of comfort. That's why parties, events, they'll gravitate towards and just all of a sudden start saying everything about them. And then I don't know why I'm saying all this, Boris, but I just feel safe around you is a common thing that I hear. So yeah, maybe something like that.
I find it so interesting because when someone is quite grounded, they might have a higher frequency or a higher energy field. But what I find is it's not tied to them being a good or bad person for some reason. It's really weird. What I've noticed is like there's a lot of people who might succeed in this world whose ethics might not align with our perception of what is good and bad. And I think it'll tie in later to one of these thought experiments that we go through. But that's why I'm like, is it just the story that we tell ourselves that matters the most? Because if we believe we are doing good and we start to vibrate and we align ourselves with the life that we love, we start to just become like a higher version of ourselves. And I don't know. I'm tossing up this idea because I feel like for so long of my journey, I've like almost had this like obsession with doing it the right way, or like trying to perfectly navigate the way to grow as a person, rather than
Mm.
telling myself a story I that will create the vision of the life that I want. But I just find it super interesting that, you know, I can't find a correlation or a relationship, like an accurate predictive relationship between someone's vibrational state and their like level
The
of,
ethics,
yeah,
like being a good person, or morality. Are you
yeah,
speaking like the behavior, like good citizenship behavior?
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. Let's just say if look to keep it simple, like virtue, you know what I mean by virtues, like just ethical virtues, compassion, kindness, honesty, loyalty, serenity, patience, acceptance, understanding. These virtues are many. They say if you want to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth, you just act within virtue, essentially. Here's where people start to complicate it or get confused about it, myself as well included, when earlier on. But we confuse this idea of virtue with good citizenship behavior. So we think if I'm a good person, that means others should be reflecting back to me good emotions or good outcomes. They feel good as an outcome. I'm them, therefore my impact is having a positive impact on them in some pro-social way. Pro-social behavior and good, like positive outcomes, is not really a good measurement of, say, spirituality, or living in the kingdom of heaven, let's say, or virtue, because honesty, it can be in direct conflict with someone's version of what they want you to be. Let's say, hey, Egan, I need you to do this thing for me, and it means a lot to me. And if you could do that, it'd be great. And you're like, man, sorry, that's not really my thing. I don't really want to go about that, and I reject you. In that moment, you could take that rejection as like a really big punch in that heart, and maybe it's even like a love relationship. Someone asks you out and said, would you be my partner? And then maybe they've conjured up the courage to do that over 3 weeks, practicing their lines in the mirror. And one day they have the courage to come and ask you out, and you say, no, that's not really you're not really my type. And they just take it harshly, and they become resentful, towards love, and they never try again, maybe. And who knows, it could lead to suicide sometimes. So just the extremes of what honesty can do. But honesty is a virtue. You know what I mean? So it's like we encourage that level of virtue, like speak your truth, set your boundaries, right? These are what we call healthy behaviors, which is what? Honoring your sovereignty, right? So there's a spiritual law, what we agree usually is your sovereignty. And so to protect that sovereignty, you're gonna ruffle some feathers. You're actually going to annoy some people, and maybe you become the villain in someone else's life or reality. You have to be willing to be the villain in someone else's life, for you to set healthy boundaries sometimes and put your foot down. It's not all pro-social behavior. You know what I mean? That's where the idea of, you're talking about quotes before, but demon hand, Buddha heart. Have you ever heard of this idea? It's like to have it's like a warrior in a garden, an ability to pull a sword, and to kill, but have an ability to love and maybe kill with a tear in your eye, knowing the value of a life you're taking is the extreme. But it's like to have a Buddha heart, but a demon hand, is just to honor the duality of this life, that it's not pro-social behavior, good behavior. So I always just tell people, keep an eye on that. What you assuming is good, virtuous behavior in the eyes of God, let's say, some religious people would say, but therefore you're a pushover. You're not really honoring your sovereignty. So what I'm saying is act with more freedom. It's like forgiveness. You make mistakes. You push back on something. You fumble through your words in trying to set your boundaries or say what you need and want, and it doesn't land quite in the way this person needs. You don't hold that, so it's a constant recycling of forgiveness. Move forward, act fully again, say what you need, say what you want, have a crack at something, and then reset, forgive all things, and fumble through it again. It's a constant recycling, but you are going to piss people off in this world. And so pro-social behavior and just having people love you or show positive behaviors back is not a good measurement of spirituality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So I've gathered 8 big thought experiments and dilemmas that we want to get into. And number 1 actually sort of
philosophy, hey?
Yeah, philosophy. Something that I have this like yearning for, like it's so overlapping with psychology. And, you know, I've delved so much into psychology, but I think philosophy is super. How would you simply define the difference between, before we go in, like if someone's thinking about psychology versus philosophy, what would there be a difference for you?
Firstly, okay, they are 2 different fields, obviously, at university, but they should always be coupled together, you know. Philosophy can be abstract, but, you know, it always lands into the way the human makes sense of the world, you know. So it's the psyche and psychology should always be coupled with that, but vice versa. If you go to study psychology in your undergrad, you will do a whole unit on the history and perspectives of psychology, which is philosophy, all the greatest philosophers. But the difference is one is an abstraction, a fumbling through wisdom and phenomena, you know, and it's not really always about coming to the answer or finiteness of something in philosophy we're talking about, but it's this, the love of wisdom, right? Philosophy. And it's like a willingness to participate in the discovery, the journey of unfolding, you know, to allow your words to just fumble through the unknown of some idea or experience of human, because we are so mysterious and this world is so mysterious and there's so many paradoxes in this world. So it's some things are almost impossible to actually come to a finite answer on. It's contextual in different, so it's true in different contexts. So it's not, you can't nail down these objective truths, which is what makes life so beautiful. I think we wouldn't want it to just be so absolute and predictable and objectified, where it's like now we've nailed the final answers of everything. No, we sort of like the idea that different contexts are like different worlds, and therefore this same idea can be applied in different ways there. So philosophy is just a willingness to fumble through wisdom, and I love that. And it's a different field, someone that just loves to think and has a great mind for depth, you know, and abstract thinking and look at ways, things that other people can't see. And it has its dry side too as well, and a sort of a pompous part to it as well. But people, it's a great way to check yourself and to see how you make sense of the world. So if you're paying attention in philosophy, you can actually see yourself. That's the point, is to pay attention to yourself fumbling through your abstractions and your decisions and your discussions and debates, how much ego is coming into it to hold on to an idea. You know, philosophy is a great mirror to see how you make sense of the world and your ego and its involvement in contamination. Psychology is, obviously what psychology is, all things to do with more behavioral methods and the way we make sense in a social world. It's more grounded in a quantifiable thing in modern psychology anyway.
I find that when I'm thinking about psychology, I have this tendency to focus so much on the physical domain and try and concentrate so heavily on tangible behaviors. And I found that the more I thought about my life within the context of psychology, I put so much pressure on myself, whereas I feel like philosophy gives you the freedom to be messy through your own evolution. Therefore, I feel like there's a stabilization of the two forces of psychology and philosophy that really help ground you in your sort of cosmic insignificance, but also like, well, if we don't apply any of these principles, we're not really going to change our physical experience in our life.
Yeah.
So I find that having both has been super beneficial for me. And I feel like I've balanced the scales more, because before I just feel like I was using psychology to trap myself in my own mind even more.
I know, you're right. They have to be coupled together, because even if you dive into any psychological position, so, you know, you have many schools of thought within psychology, you know, health psychology, psychodynamic psychology, psychotherapy. You have a lot of different positions or methods, right? Or approaches in psychology. How do they come up with those different approaches or schools of thought, right? From psychodynamic psychotherapy to existential psychotherapy, humanistic psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral psychology or psychotherapy. all of these have what? Different foundational philosophies underneath them. So it's actually when they debate each other on the right way to deal with a person or help or assist a person, they have to have a bunch of basic assumptions. I have to basically assume, let's say if I was a cognitive behavioral therapist, let's say I assume no spirituality in you. I assume that problems can be solved through behavioral intervention, right? So it's a belief. But that belief has to come from a bunch of philosophical ideas underneath that about what we think a human is and what they're not, right? And then I have to choose something, right? So that's why different schools of thought within psychology all have different philosophical underpinnings about what they believe about the world and what they believe about a human and how problems can be solved at a psychic level. So philosophy cannot be decoupled with psychology, but what was missing is a spiritual element. I don't think psychology can be decoupled from spirituality. Can't be decoupled from psychology either. You need all of it together. Yeah.
Star-crossed lovers.
Yeah.
So, number 1, Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus is a thought experiment that asks whether, if you replace all the original parts of a ship one by one, is it the same ship? When you bring this to our lives, it begs the question: can you completely reinvent yourself, or is there an unchanging core?
You're going to throw it out to me first. All right. If I look at the question first, just like as a thought experiment, I tend to lean towards the say the original wood. The original wood of a ship holds the memories, like it's seen things about the origins of that ship. So when we call it, this is the original ship, and it, even if it has all of its planks of wood changed out, and is it a new ship essentially if all the planks of wood have been changed out? I think there's something about the essence of those original planks and what they've seen. It was something during that time, and it has its own entity because of its memories, because of its ideas, as if every plank of wood has consciousness and it's seen things, right? And so it was something at that point. So if you look at yourself, all the proteins, all the muscle tissue, the fascia that you hold in your body is like the planks of wood, is where my mind is going. And it's seen things, it holds memories. Your childhood has seen things, you know what I mean? The meat suit that you wore in, say, 2018, you know, the meat suit that you wore in 2012, all of these had different experiences that held stains of emotion, with different ideas within that. So you were someone back then, but through evolution and changing and different belief systems and, say, doing this inner work of self-reflection, you can start, it's like removing those planks of wood. There is a common theme underneath all of that because it's still you. I think there's always this, that's what we call the higher self, or the truest version of you that rides the journey. But you can be transformed into something. And that's where your karma, you'll see different karmic loops changing because the planks of the wood are different. You're not holding onto stains of old ideas and emotions of hate or envy or resentfulness. And so the way you experience the world is different. And that's why when you meet someone that you haven't seen in 10 years, it's like, wow, man, you're a different person, you know? And it's like, yeah, because you're not holding the stains of the wood, you know, in the proteins or the body that you were before. And so you are experienced as a new person, new ideas, new beliefs. So it's a new foundational essence to you. But there is a core, and that's what would be more akin to the Dharma, your higher self. There's some sort of thing that you came out to be, and there is a core to you. It might be more akin to your personality type as well, on average, like the Enneagram that we spoke about. So I think, yeah, there is always going to be some essence, essential quality to you, but the malleability of it all can be interchangeable based on what you are willing to look at within the planks of the wood of your body.
Fundamentally, I sort of disagree with the Ship of Theseus because I don't think replacing the ship's planks, for example, is analogous to changing us. I mean, that is exactly what it's asking, but I fundamentally disagree that, because I think when we heal, right, I don't think we change the planks. I think we put them in the right position. I think it's like how I would conceptualize this sort of metaphor is that if we had a ship and we were going to replace the parts of it, I think we we heal those planks. We don't replace them in terms of with a new plank. We refurbish the existing plank, or it might not be in the right position of the ship. I don't think we get rid of it. Same thing, all these things in ourselves, like parts of ourselves that we've disowned, we learn to love it again. We polish, we refurbish the plank. We don't just compensate in the other direction. And, you know, let's say we've suppressed all our love our whole life. We don't just love everyone and people please and never, you know, hold our own boundaries. And we don't just put that new plank in. I think we find a way to reintegrate this plank so it serves a purpose. That's how that's what comes to me.
Oh, look, yeah, I love where your mind is going, because you can just choose what you would like the symbolism to be of the planks of wood and what it represents. And so you're saying it's like parts of you, right? And these parts of you might be scared parts of you. And so rather than getting rid of it, or let's say it's an angry part of you, the dark side of you, rather than getting rid of it, you don't change it out, but more about a refurbishing, it's a polishing, which means like a loving, which is IFS, like your internal family systems. And most way we work with parts of ourselves, we learn to love them, which is the way you're describing is more metaphorically as a polishing, and you're not separating those parts. You're not putting them over there. You know, it's about an integration and holism. So I like where your mind is going. Where I could I could agree with that removal of the planks is if I linked those planks of wood to old ideas, the things that are disposable within me. I might hold an idea that, where my mind is going, it's like, but all the pharmaceutical companies are trustworthy, or the medical system is trustworthy. And so some people double down into that. It's an idea, it's a belief system, and they own it like it's an identity, right? And that part can be removed completely. Like this idea that they are entirely this, or let's say it's more personal. I am a bad person. It's an idea.
But do you think the plank isn't, and an idea can't be a plank? This would be my counter straight away, is I don't think an idea and a belief is a part of the plank. I think it's one of those, it's almost like a passenger who comes on board and tries to steer the ship in another direction. I don't think at your core, these beliefs that are projected onto us are part of our own original ship.
Okay, so you're saying, well, what's the original part of you then? If the thoughts and ideas are not the original part of you because they've been given to you.
That's what I mean. I've always wrestled with this idea between, like, when we're growing up, we get all these beliefs put onto us, all these experiences in our environment shape our beliefs about ourselves, and we almost don't know who we are without those experiences. And I wrestle with this idea that if we started with a blank canvas, who would we be if we removed all these ideas? Because at the end of the day, we're sort of an alchemy of all these different experiences, and we try and create this understanding, which becomes our belief system. So without that, who are we? And that's confusing, because it means, did we arrive with a soul that has its own purpose? Would if we could somehow theoretically remove every single belief that was put onto us, where would we land? What would that ship look like? That's where my mind goes with that metaphor. Because that's a good way to start thinking about then what's the original parts to the ship, because social learning versus the blank canvas, blank canvas, and then socially learning everything as your identification. Then it's like, what parts of me original? Like just the meat, that's it. I came in with nothing, and this is like Stephen Pinkett. These are all being argued to the ends of the earth, But now that we've got these newer ideas where we're integrating the phenomenal world of the spirituality and metaphysics and parapsychology, right? Look, just this week, last week, I hypnotized maybe 7 people, and 5 of them went back to a perspective, let's say, zoomed out to a perspective of seeing their entire life, and agreed in their own volition and agency that they chose this life and everything in it, the parents, the pains, the hurts. And some of these people, they were curious about spirituality but were leaning on the fence, and let's just say for the validity of it, 2 of them really didn't hold any spiritual ideas about
this kind of idea of a soul knowing this life or choosing this life. But 5 of them went there anyway. And so it just gets us to at least be curious about, well, what's that about, this origins, what are we bringing into it when these people are sort of coming to this perspective that they chose this to some degree, and what's the origins of that then, and that's where it starts to go into this never-ending abstraction. So yeah, what parts of the ship is that, where they knew that this is what I wanted to experience. I wanted to experience love or freedom. That means they had to contrast it with this pain, and they chose that and they knew about it. And it just all comes landing in. So again, yeah, what blank canvas is that, when there's this weird knowingness. So,
well, the Ship of Theseus is limited to the physical domain, right? Like we're trying to, if we're talking about abstract things about the essence of someone, well, how can you capture the essence of a ship that's sort of in the physical domain? So that's the whole thing I wanted to explore was like, do we have this fundamental core? Like a lot of people go on this journey of self-discovery, self-improvement. They're almost trying to access this inner ship. Like who are they without all of these things that have been put onto them? But I think as we heal, I think it's like, can we completely reinvent ourselves? Or is there like this starting point, this like 0.0 that we're trying to like get back to? Because you know how people like, I just want to get back to like who I was when I was growing up in terms of the freedom, and I'm like, what is that starting point?
Yeah.
That's the idea. Like, can you become this new person? Like, are we trying to replace parts of a ship, and can we have this new identity? Because I feel like some people frame it as we're going towards a new identity, and some people it's like a self-discovery. You see sort of two frameworks. One is going towards this new version of yourself, creating this identity. I hated that version of myself, so I'm going to become this version of myself. Yeah. And then there's some people who it's like a process of self-discovery, like who am I without all of these beliefs that were put onto me?
Yeah. I will say that there's something about the childhood where there was an innocence. In that innocence, there was a playfulness on average. Let's say you were closer to what your heart wanted to do, right? In that essence, there was an expression of the heart. And you can watch kids. They're not all wanting to do the same things. So again, within the freedom, and say you control the environment of the average parenting styles, and you took 100 of these kids in similar homes and similar upbringings, and you even within families, you will just see that at certain points, they're just very different. There's different character types, temperaments, we might say. This is where, where it gets weird, let's just say, to break free of the modern psychology. You have kids that are talking about past lives. They're having dreams of other timelines saying, mum, my other mum, things like that as well, where it starts to get even more of something else is happening underneath the social learning. There's enough evidence for that already. So it's like, okay, there is something that's coming through their DNA, something that's coming beyond their social learning already. So we already know that there's something more inherent. But during the childhood, there is less constraint from the society that says you need to be like this. So let's just say there is more of a closer understanding of what the heart wants to do. And then we dress up. Then we do what school wants. Then we do what everyone wants us to do. And we start to lose that essence and quality. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I think that there's like a need to survive in this world and play the game to understand where we're at now. So we have to sort of block out just all that we want to do and feel and in a sort of loose way. So there's something about needing to train in this world to understand where we're at. And then you do the full circle. You have this awakening, let's say, where people go back to their childhood. It's like, well, who am I really? They ask bigger questions. What are they doing? They're asking about their heart. What does my heart really want to do in this world? So there's something about remembering the innocence of your childhood because it was closer to the feelings of your heart. And we're assuming, and what I'm subscribing to, I think, is I'm seeing that, let's say, in the heart, this abstraction of the heart, the soul heart, there is a more of a blueprint of your dharma, the thing that would most make this life fulfilling. It's not, and it's not completely a blank canvas. That's where we're starting to talk about this spiritual knowing or a soulful knowing what you came here to do. And I'm only just speaking from the over 1,000 clients that I've hypnotized in these states, saying the same thing, that there was a knowingness of what they wanted to most experience, and it's written in your heart, which is just the most deepest part of your blueprint for this lifetime, and it tells you. And so we're trying to return to that thing. Why? It's because we know that if you get there and you act courageously and freely on that heart's calling, its messaging, its whispers, hey, go on that adventure. Hey, man, do that podcast. You know, go hard at it. And you get that inspiration. There's something about that will lead to a fulfilling life. And that's all that really matters. And yours will be unique to you. And so it's about just listening to the excitement of the heart. And it has to be uncontaminated by the social learning, which is why we go and do the inner work and what is more me? Well, that more me is something to do with the whispers of the heart, the visions of excitement, the thing that you feel most compelled to do. And if you look at your entire life, let's say it's a training ground, that it was all for something. Put it all together. What does it all look like if it was all meant to be put together in some shape and form to create my niche? You know, that no time was wasted, all the trauma, all the random things that I thought were irrelevant. Put it all together. It's a unique life. What is it all telling me to get on with, you know, in my niche kind of way?
Simultaneously, I find that we have a fixation, or what I see in others and in myself is we have this fixation on going one way or the other, right? Like it's the self-discovery without the real-world application. And I find that there's this simultaneous nature of finding our essence and our core, because I think that gives us the gateway for fulfillment. Because if you're not anchored in your truth, what is designed for you, then I think there's limitations on how much you can experience in this life in the physical domain. But I think there's a tangible world we're in that you sort of need to play that game. It reminds me of the movie I just watched called The Running Man. It was a remake of a 1980s with Arnold, but it was basically this guy we had a family he was trying to provide for. And I mean, it ties into like morals and ethics in one of these other ones, but it was this movie about like the rich versus the poor. And it was this show where he had 30 days to survive. He was getting chased by these people who were trying to kill him. And it was all for the show, for the rich people. And what I find fascinating about this is it forced him to confront his own sort of truth, because he had to make a decision about, like, because the guy who was running it all they're trying to optimize the ratings for the show, so they would twist the game. And he had to make a decision between, do I stick with my fundamental values, or do I sort of work for this guy and play the game? And what he was able to do was both. He was able to manipulate the real world game where there is this sort of capitalistic nature and there was a sort of ego and all about the ratings, but he was also able to stick true to his truth because he knew what his truth was. He knew his morals, he knew his values, and he was able to play the game and win the game, but also not corrupt his own values. And I find that that's analogous to what a lot of us are trying to do. I feel like people feel like the world is against them. And it is a bit of a game, right? Because at the end of the day, we are primal species and there is this sort of game that we're in. And I think there's a deeper aspect of our soul as well. And I think there's this dance and this tension between the two. And I find that we don't like to find the grayness in that. But that is, I think, the most optimal way to find that balance of seeking fulfillment, being grounded in your truth, but also applying it so you actually can experience the depths of it too. Because knowing how to find fulfillment, like I feel like I'm pretty clear on my vision, but if I don't apply it and get to experience it, then it's just an idea.
Yeah. There's like if someone's, say, let's just say more traumatized, which is, say, more split, they'll split the world into black and white. There'll be more of a this is the way the world is over here and this is the way the world is over here. And let's just say spirituality versus the material world. We tend to decouple that completely with a line in between in the middle. And so it's no different to tribalism, where we split red versus blue, good and evil, right? And there's always one good and there's one bad. It's just an internal version of themselves. But why that's significant is because as that split happens, there is like this inherent guilt of being on one side or the other. You know, if I'm on the good side, then I'm righteous and that's the bad side. Everyone on that side is bad, or acting out that way is bad. But you'll find that world is it's in seasons and cycles, and you'll go up and down, and you'll surprise yourself, and you'll find yourself acting out the things that you determine as bad. But because of that judgment of that, you will find yourself now in that judgment or the rejection of that behavior, the denial of that part of you, or if you do accept it, a punishment of the self. All right, and you got this split. So rather than getting caught up in this too much of a split world of there's something about the middle, an acceptance that you are in the physical world, you are here to get on with it. There's something about it being important because I'm here, I exist. It's like Rene Descartes saying the only thing I could be certain of is that I exist. And right now I exist here. I'm aware of this. And so there's something about not wanting to run away from this. So in spirituality, where I'm splitting, I need to be all in the etheric world, right? A lot of people going to spirituality, they're too in the etheric or the astral, a rejection of the flesh, rejection of the body. I just spoke to a guy at an event, CEOs and stuff at an event, and what's he saying? He whispers to me, Boris, I heard you talking. He felt a bit of courage to just share a bit more, and he said, the truth is, look, I was a Hare Krishna devotee, full on. He says it's like SAS training when you fully go into it, waking up 3 a.m. and everything's scheduled. He is an insurance guy, complete split world. I mean, what he was doing there versus, but pay attention to the extremes. He has this inherent guilt now that he's like, this is bad, this is wrong. I feel making money now, he feels yuck about it, but he's like, I've got to get on with it, got to do it. So for me, it'd be something about a consolidation of the both, which is what you're saying, allowing yourself to take on the principles of the Hare Krishna thing. If there's joyfulness, playfulness, discipline, how would you bring that into the world where you're participating? Because you still have a skill set and an ability to be in this world. Say insurance, corporate. Take the dark into light is your task, I think, where there's most fulfillment. So it's like, see what you can do to bring those beautiful spiritual ideas in its practice and apply it in this. And so forgive yourself for being in the material world. Forgive yourself for being a fallen angel. You are not forsaken, as the Bible sort of says. You are here. And so it's like return home into your forgiveness and then just see what you can apply here and play the game. But don't lie to yourself, essentially, and get rid of the judgment of the whole thing.
There's a powerful quote from Jung that goes, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. That's way more fulfilling because, look, this is where we get caught up in love and light. Remember we said pro-social behavior? We get caught up in the sun is good, the night is bad, light and dark, good and evil, right? No, it's like spirituality with love, good feelings, pro-social behavior, making others just feel good all the time. Light. I just put up a quote on my story, I think a couple of days ago, Bruce Lee as well. But it's about the light, it loses its value essentially if you're always in the light. It's like, well, the rhythm of light and dark gives it contrast and gives it then inherent value. So there's something about that dance and allowing it to be. So the meaning found in the darkness and transmutation into light, to take something fearful and turn it into freedom, or something loving, something that was contained in darkness and fear and rejection, and turn it into forgiveness. It's like, that's where the reward of this life is always found, to pick up something heavy and make it lighter. That's where you get this fulfillment that this life is worth it, this flesh was worth this life, and so it's not really about just staying in light, staying in bliss, staying in happiness, in comfort. So I think we've seen enough philosophy around that. We know now that's not where it's at. What's his name? Dostoevsky, that author, Russian author, Fyodor Dostoevsky. He's in the book The Underground Man, he wrote, I just hope that I'm worth my suffering in this world. I just hope that I'm worth my suffering. worthy of my suffering. And it's a powerful thing to sit on for a moment, because it's like it's presupposing that suffering is the way, right? Same with existential philosophy, the four givens of existence from Irving Yalom. Just the fact that you are human comes with four givens of existence, and all of them create anxiety and suffering. So it's like there's something inherent about the fact that you're in this world. It's about countering the suffering. And that's why Dostoevsky was saying, I just hope that I'm worthy of my suffering, because he's telling us that suffering is the value. You see, spiritually saying that your suffering is your path to meaning. And so it's like, you better be worth it. You know, be worthy of your suffering, because that's where your greatest meaning and reward will be, is in the depths of your suffering. Yeah, so it's definitely about that, the darkness into light.
Number 2 ties in. Mary's room is a thought experiment that asks, if a scientist knows everything there is to know about colour, but has never seen it herself, does she learn anything new the moment she experiences it? When you bring this to life, it begs the question, can knowledge ever replace experience, or are some truths only discovered through living them? And the question there, can knowledge ever replace experience? I have another quote that from Einstein that says, the only source of knowledge is experience. So I find that in this world now, there's such a mindset around improvement, or like there's an awareness that we can evolve. And with that awareness is this tension, because I think there's a price that growth entails. And I don't think we want the reward without the cost. And this room is sort of analogous to that, because I think there's so much intellectual awareness around the world we have now, because there's so much information. But I think the in-person, tangible human experience provides an understanding that the intellect can't. And that's what this question asks, like, what are the limitations of the intellectual understanding or knowing of something versus the real, tangible, in-person experience? What do you think experience gives us that knowing something intellectually can't provide?
Have you heard of the word qualia? The base word of quality.
Yeah.
Right. So it's where we place, have you heard of the hard problem? Right.
I'm reading a book from this neuroscientist, I think he's neuroscientist, about consciousness from.
Yes.
Have you heard of that one?
Yeah. So it's the hard problem is based and coupled with qualia, almost like, why do we experience anything, right? Why is the apple red? Really, why are we experiencing it like that? It's just you can't get to the bottom of it. That's why it's a philosophical question. But qualia is the base word for what we are trying to describe or give a language to, the essential experience. Your subjective experience, is the quality. So the quality of that thing. Why do we have qualitative studies? Quantitative, qualitative studies. Qualitative is we're trying to capture your lived experience through your language, through your whatever we can extract from you as a subjective, unique individual, to gain the quality of your experience of a particular treatment drug or an intervention or anything really, just your experience on something. And so we have language essentially for that. We try to describe, but it's futile to really capture the essential quality. Then say the more abstract and the deeper the experience, the harder it is to explain away in words. So spirituality being the thing which is too hard to actually capture. That's why they call it the ineffable. Plotinus, the Greek philosopher, spoke about the one thing, which is now God, or the source of all things, the one singularity. It's the ineffable, he said. You actually can't speak about it. It's only an experiential thing, right? It's so far from the human perspective and our sensory experience and language capabilities that there's no actual way of explaining it away. So knowledge is futile in those moments. So there is something only by the experience of this universe, and the quality of that experience gives us this inherent understanding or perspective or position or lesson about it, and it might be too hard to put in language or words or intellect. But there's something about a knowingness when you hit this, say, spiritual truth. Rather than explaining it, I think people know what I'm talking about when, let's say, you hit the right psychedelic experience or meditative experience or peak experience, flow state. There's something there that you have an inherent knowing. Sometimes I experienced my grandmother, she spoke to me. She came to me in my dreams. It's like there's this knowing that was her, Too hard to explain away. You can't really fully understand or knowledge that thing either, but there's a knowingness. So it's only through the experience of this universe that gives it its value. So that's why experience, I think, is the only way through a lot of things like that. But look, experience scares the hell out of us too. And that's why I don't want to experience some of my worst emotions. Let's say the things that I've blocked away in my body, memories, ideas, things that I don't want to feel because I wanted to survive and put on a face. And it's just too scary and overwhelming. And so I compartmentalize. And now all of a sudden, I'd rather know all about that through knowledge. So this is where intellectualizing is one of the defense mechanisms in psychology, because someone that is too afraid to feel, experience their deepest, darkest shadow realms within their body and mind and memories, they will learn about it. So it's like, I've got a symptom, I've got a pathology, I've got a diagnosis. They will learn about it. Learn everything. They'll read the books on it. They'll tell you what's on page 73 about this diagnosis and what academics said this about, and they know all about it. But there's something still that it's just creating a separation, so I don't have to experience it, because I know that I lose myself in the actual experience of it. But it's like there's some inherent knowing that you don't get to go through this life without experiencing your truth. There's something about you actually have to go and experience to know something or learn your lesson, a spiritual lesson.
It's like that quote, "The cave you feared to enter holds the treasure you seek." But also, around this knowledge and the in-person experience, is this quote I love from Plato that says, "Knowledge without experience is like a map without territory." We have this like intellectual understanding as almost like a protection mechanism. And how I see that even in myself, right? Like I feel like I've been on that journey. It's like we have this vault internally, like call it our soul. We have this purpose, we have this gift. And instead of, opening the vault because it's it's an unknown, it's an uncertainty, we start putting these guards around the front of it. We call that intellectual armoring, like almost bubble wrapping the vault. And it's really easy to confuse the activity, because I think we have a signal that there's activity around this vault. Like the conscious experiences, there's activity around the vault. I'm doing the intellectual understanding. That's easy to confuse with you've opened the vault.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I see it, because I'm like, sometimes I feel like I'm thinking so much about something, but I'm not actually feeling it or opening the vault and seeing what's in there, because you have to let go as well to access that. And the letting go means to put the guards to the side.
It's trickery. Yeah. So the ego is great at playing tricks. So we trick ourselves essentially into thinking we've done the work or I've passed the test. And this is where I'm thinking about one of the problems, which is the myth of Sisyphus, but the king that tricks Zeus, or tries to anyway, and then tricks Thanatos, and Persephone. That trickery is the assumption, this egoic idea that maybe I can fool nature, right? The inherent laws of the fundamentals. So we play the game, believing because we got a bit of success here. Look, I convinced someone, I deceived them, and I convinced enough people that I'm healed or that I'm this person and that I'm actually all sweet. Everything's all good, nothing to see. And I've convinced enough people that I'm starting to believe it myself. We play funny tricks on ourselves, man, really just to make sure we don't feel into our experience or the thing that's the vault that you're explaining as well. But it's just you and your voice, you and your conscience at the end of the night. and that it always creeps up to let you know you've talked shit today, you know, and people don't like that voice. That's the voice of truth. It creeps up. It lets you know that you're deviating from your heart's calling. It lets you know that you're lying. It lets you know that you're deceiving. You're deviating from your conscience. And it creeps up, and that's where distractions will come in. People don't want to hear that voice. And so they will go into distraction, mind-numbing tasks, make sure that they drown themselves to sleep in distraction so they don't hear that voice, essentially. But yeah, the trickery only goes so far. And that's why you have to have a transcendental, I think, idea of yourself and this, or there's more to you than what your mind can conjure up. Or else you just believe that you can do the healing without actually experiencing it, because there's always a humbling simplicity in the actual lived experience of it all. If you've gone in your vault, it leaves you with your shoulders dropped in a humbled sort of way. That's hard to describe sometimes, but yeah. Otherwise, when you hear someone explaining the hell out of their symptoms or way of being, you can hear it. It's like this person's playing tricks on themselves, and that's partly my job. Is that if I'm a mirror for someone else, as a client therapist position, is to just check if you're speaking about something too intellectually, and I can see your facial expressions or your demeanor is not matching the quality of what I'm assuming that would have actually felt like in an experience. It's like, oh yeah, you're skating around the edges, trying to convince me that there's nothing to see there. And it's like, good luck. Yeah.
Something we'll flow into the next one is number 3, the experience machine, because I think it ties in a lot to truth. So the experience machine is a thought experiment that asks whether you would plug into a device that gives you perfect simulated happiness for your entire life, even if it's not real. When you think about it in human terms, it challenges us to ask, is true fulfillment found in pleasure alone, or does authenticity and reality matter more than bliss? I find that there's this yearning for truth, even if it's painful. And that's where I find there's this real tension between the primal brain that is seeking pleasure, prey, and running away from predator. And that's competing against our soul, which has a yearning for truth and integration and reality. And I think it takes a lot of courage to start listening to what your soul is whispering to you. And I think this experience machine probes a lot of these existential ideas about consciousness and what is truly important. If we could have a perfect experience, I've asked people this question, and some of them said they would have it. They would, because you don't even know that you chose that, right? So in this experiment, you think that it's not normal reality, and you're just having this bliss. Your life played out exactly how you wanted to. What do you think?
I'm going to ask you a question first. What do you think we're here for? Like, what do you think humans are here for? I know it's a hard question. It's like literally the meaning of life. But allow yourself to fumble through it, assuming you don't have to have the exact answer. But just what do you think humans are here for?
I think we have a soul that has a mission. But then I find myself trapping myself in the game of life, though, because it's like I have a mission that's still trapped in the game of life. And I'm like, is that a bad thing or a good thing? But I think we all have this, what are we here for? I think we're here to experience. It's like a playground. I see life as a playground. I think we're here to enjoy our time, but go through challenges and evolve and expand this reality. And I think everyone has such a different purpose and mission, and I think that's where we balance each other out. And I think there's this hidden order that makes sense, but sometimes it feels chaotic and I feel like I have no understanding of the world. And then sometimes I feel like I have this perfect understanding. And the further along I go, the more order it seems like there is, but the more chaos it feels like. I feels like there's so many pairs of opposites and paradoxes that make my understanding of the world confusing. So I find as I understand myself and the world more, I feel like I'm also becoming less certain, but more peaceful, or more more calm, and more just able to let go a little bit. But I find that in that I feel like there's the bandwidth of my understanding of what the world is so much further apart. But I find more peace. I feel like I don't have as much oscillation between the two.
in some of those worst moments, let's say when you're confused and you haven't got a grip on the world, and we've all been there, to those dark places, just imagine some of those darkest places you've been mentally. In those moments, would you wish that away? Would you wish that experience isn't happening or didn't happen?
In the moment, you would say yes, but when I look back and I connect the dots and see, and I'm able to appreciate how this helped me evolve as a person. But if you ask someone who's going through the depths of their despair in the moment, would you wish this away? They'd say yes in a heartbeat. Yeah. But if you showed them a vision of their life, this is where your life leads you when you go through this, they might say yes. But that's depending on the outcome, because there's also a survivorship bias I find in this world, where a lot of the people who are preaching that suffering is the prerequisite for success have passed the test, whereas there's so many people who are suffering endlessly, and I don't know the solution for that. How much agency do they have in their lives? How much is out of their control?
Yeah, so this is where it's great to think about the fundamental beliefs, right? What do you believe you're here for? Because that's going to anchor you to the decision process in those worst times. That's your North Star. So your ultimate beliefs become your North Star in the worst times. Good times is almost irrelevant to measure your highest beliefs or quality in the good times, because good times are just good times, right? But in the bad times, it's like where you really, really see who you are and what you are, and the things that are the most fundamental to you. So if in those moments you would wish away, because most people would just, I want to make this go away, and the suffering seems endless sometimes, you've tried everything to make it go away and you're feeling pretty hopeless. At those moments, watch how quickly people's beliefs can change. What they once believed, say, weeks earlier about what the world is and the advice they're giving to others is in a positive kind of way. And if it's someone else, they're telling them some positive thing about working through things and staying with it. But in the heat of their moment, they can easily flip to life is meaningless. Like, this is not how you're meant to live. And I've tried everything and life is hopeless. Life is shit. And if there's a good God, why would we have to experience this? And you look at all the worst suffering, why are children born with this? And, so in those moments, you look to those big beliefs about what is the purpose of life? Like, why am I here for? And that's why it's important for, I think, all people to just flesh that out in conversation, because if you can just remember that, have a reference point to a higher belief, right? That is more than just about pleasure or good feelings. That will then be your North Star that you can hopefully remember in the darkest moments, that says, okay, no, this is sort of part of it. This is part of it, right? And then you put one foot in front of the other. You don't really know where it's going to go. But because of what you know to be true when things are calm, your clarity of mind, you know this to be true about life. It's like, well, then go there. If you have no transcendental idea about what we're spoken about a mission, I'm here to go through. I mean, what is a good mission or a hero's journey without tremendous discomfort, suffering, unknowns, unpredictabilities, risk? There's no good story of a hero without those kinds of elements, close to death, but pulling through anyway. So it's like your life will have all those things in it. And if you characterize it only by pleasure, let's say, then it makes those moments seem irrelevant. And so you have to have a transcendental belief about this world, anchored to that as a higher truth. Why? Is because the truth is your greatest character, and you becoming an inspirational person for someone else because of what you've done in the darkest moments. Simple as that. The greatest heroes you look up to is because of what they've done or said in their worst moments and how they pulled through. They showed us an example of what the human potential could be when all odds are against you. This is inspirational, right? And so there's something about that lures us, that we want to be a part of. So yeah, if to now the question, just to plug into a machine, it's no different to someone just distracting, addictions, medication to just make symptoms go away. This is all just, I'd ask everyone just look at how they're avoiding just seeking pleasure, or at least not feeling bad feelings, right? Because it's too hard, it's too scary. And so be careful not courageously experiencing the quality of the depths. And yeah, you're going through some hard times, you've felt it enough, and you need a sort of a helping hand to get out of it, and that might be medication or distraction, and that's okay. But don't lie to yourself in terms of actually sitting with the depths of what that emotion is and the quality of that experience. Again, the quality of it. Because if you obfuscate responsibility, what I think is your spiritual responsibility is to go in and experience all that you are, and that's swimming in your vessel, to extract the wisdom from that qualia, from that experience of the depth of that domain of darkness or, fear, then you've missed something, and so you'll dress it up in medication or distraction or addiction, and hopefully you can live a good life. Those people that subscribe to that method, they would essentially plug in to that machine, and believe that would be a fulfilling life. That's okay to do that. I can actually just feel good. Plug me in, just generate the stories that make me feel good. Then I don't have to worry about the dark things, and everything will be programmed in it. And that's essentially where half the population is going to now, an obfuscation of the internal sovereignty of regulating the self, and just having external things, stimulation to regulate the self. That will then lead to a subscription where, hey man, just make the world safe. I'll give you my freedom. I'll give you whatever you want. Just make me feel good. Eventually that leads to just plug me into something, matrix. Then the paradox is like what Carl Jung, Alan Watts, that clip that was going around about creating a dream. If you could dream any dream, what would eventually lead to, after thousands of iterations of creating the best dream, you've experienced everything you ever could, and eventually it gets a bit mundane and boring because everything's predictable. At some point you actually start to put in unpredictability, risk, unknowns, because of the mystery element of it and wanting to be surprised by life. And so you'd conjure up a dream that's actually mysterious and a bit dangerous and scary and unknown, and put yourself in different positions, which essentially with the life that you're living, you'd come back to a life of suffering, essentially. It's a weird sort of paradox.
That's awesome.
Just gets a bit heavy.
I like that. A quote I like from Nietzsche was about, he who has a strong why can bear almost any how. And what I love about that is it's such a positive spiral. I was thinking about this because it's like, when the how, if you have a strong why, you can embrace the how, but that allows you to go through experiences that strengthen your why. And think of a weighted scale that allows your willingness to embrace the how gets stronger, which puts you in harder experiences, reinforces the why. The why gets stronger, which gives you greater strength to go through the how. That's why people who have a strong mission, even if you start small, it's just such a positive spiral, because you get stronger, your willingness to embrace more difficult challenges and more uncertainty goes up. You can see logically how being connected to a why simply can give someone these outcomes. There might be people that we aspire to be like because of the journey that they've gone on. But it can start with a small why, because I think what happens is, I think the why gets stronger as well. Because think back to your journey of talking to people. How much stronger has your mission got through all the people that you've met and seen the changes in, right? That's strengthened your why, which allows you to go through more of the how.
Yeah. Man, look, and I could spend probably a long time even on that quote, because it's so significant to have a why. Like, it's almost, you can't actually go through this life without a why. One is just look at Aristotle's. He said, like, nothing can exist in this world without a purpose or function, right? So the natural laws of this world, everything that exists has to have a function or a purpose, or else it wouldn't exist.
Should we tie in the myth of Sisyphus?
Yeah,
I feel
you
like
can
that.
in a moment, in a second. And so it's like that why component is the essential quality of experience. Why endure anything? if it doesn't have some sort of purpose or meaning, right? Purpose or function. So therefore, if suffering is a guarantee in this world, which it is, then you have to have a why to counter it. So you actually can't go through this world without a why. So that's how important it is. So for those that are not really sure about their why, then spend some time thinking about that why. I mean, you might know why you should go to the gym, right? But it's deeper than that. Your why might not even be the surface. So, hey, man, go to the gym. You know, you're unhealthy, you're overweight, you're sick. Go to the gym. Why? Well, because so you can be healthy. Deeper than that. Watch this person. No. Obfuscate responsibility, not go. Create excuses not to go. It's like, what are you doing, man? People around that person watch in awe. Like, dude, just do this basic thing. What are you doing? This is where it becomes a psychological issue. It's like, why won't you just do the basics? And it's not like they're busy. It's just there's a restriction, a mental restriction of just getting on with making the body healthy. Why? Well, their why is because I'm not worth it, right? Something in them says, I don't deserve good things in this world. Maybe relationships scare me. I get rejected, and maybe this is a way of keeping myself safe. So there is a why in resistance to what logically seems normal. Just get on with it. But there's this deep unworthiness that comes from a long time ago that they're not aware of. And so they have to get clear on what their why is, that they are not getting on with something that they know to be true and just right. And then they have to come up with a better why after they now believe something more about themselves. No, this life is chaotic and it is unpredictable. People do get hurt. I do get hurt. I was hurt when I was a child, and it can stay there. It was contextual, but I'm inherently lovable. Because I'm inherently lovable and I have a mission, I want to make an impact on someone's life. I want to see what I'm capable of in that domain there. I want to push the flesh to some limit. Now that I'm worth it, see, so this is inherent, I am worthy, sort of I am valuable, has to be inherent for this person to then have why it's even worthy of taking on that what you would assume to just be a normal basic thing to take care of the flesh. So people have to really wrestle with that why.
That's where I like the DeMartini method approach here. So they believe in the framework, everyone has a unique set of values, and what happens is we inject other people's values in. So health and fitness might not be someone's number one value. For most people, it's lower in the ranks. It might be 3 or 4. Might not even be in the top 4. But one of the exercises, let's say, to help them keep fit is first they do a values determination process, which DeMartini has these series of specific questions, and then they start linking their lower values to their higher values. So they start to create these neural correlations and associations to why doing the exercise and the health prioritization benefits their highest value, so that they stop stopping themselves.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, they start to see why it's important and why it serves them. And I think there is some associations with unsafety, right? Like some people don't want to put on weight because they don't want the attraction of the other gender because there's a negative association with, and it's all associations. So we can strengthen those associations by becoming conscious of the links between the things that we might not want to do and our truth and our mission. But that's where it's like, first, if we get super clear on our mission, we can see if there's anything resisting that path, and then we can find ways to find the benefits and the linkages between them.
Yeah, look, hey, dude, good point with the values. So values is something where I start with everyone, even if it's a corporate company, the leadership team, we were speaking about earlier. You have to all get clear on your value system, your value hierarchy. So important, because your deathbed hierarchy all of a sudden is different to the one that when you were 30 years old, right? It's like the things that you thought were important become very irrelevant on your deathbed. In hindsight, it's like, man, I wish someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, dude, that's actually not that important. That fear that you're putting there or the value of that person's opinion is irrelevant, and you will laugh at you. So you'll kick yourself on your deathbed. Man, if only I could do it again, eh? Reincarnation idea. Then I'll do it better. So sort your value hierarchy out based on what do you really want to experience in this world. It's like get clear on that excitement of the heart, this vision, the inspirational ideas that you get that are like, it should scare you a bit as well, right? It's inherently a part of the process. Then when you got that, you gauge your behaviors and decision-making processes around it and see how you trick yourself around that. Because you find yourself going for lower rung values if you really settled, got a clarity of mind, and you would find out that you are avoiding the ones that lead to the highest quality, the highest values. Why? Because they scare the hell out of you. Rollo May, existential philosopher, psychotherapist, you are afraid of your potential is your truth. All your symptoms, it's what, not Viktor Frankl, I've forgotten the other guy, Alfred Adler. Yeah, they were talking about you create your symptoms. A lot of people don't like that when I say that. It's like there is some part of you that knows that if you didn't have the symptoms there, you would have to get on with your life task. This is what Alfred Adler's main tenet was in his philosophy or approach. His basic assumptions, as we spoke about from philosophy, his basic assumption was that you have a life task. It's almost subscribing to a soul's calling or a journey or a mission. And it's going to be tremendously scary to actually get on with it because you're going to be vulnerable. It's going to be exposing. There's going to be commitments and responsibilities that you can't turn back from. And it's like, you're going to want to run. Your full potential scares the hell out of you, is the truth. And so you will create barriers, handbrakes, distractions, things to go in the way of the thing that would lead to the fruition of those highest values and experiences that would lead to your heart's fulfillment, because it's not about just good feelings. It's about what we spoke about earlier, going into the dark and doing something courageous from that point. And so that's why we try to avoid that at all costs. So yeah, part of the work, man, literally at a basic level, is to just get people to check their value hierarchy, see where you're lying to yourself, creating just a story of how you can't get on with that thing there. And you're at a lot, because that will lead to this this regret on the deathbed that you really don't want to experience. Yeah.
In the myth of Sisyphus, he asks us to imagine a man who's condemned to endlessly push a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time. Even in a life of repetitive, seemingly pointless effort, we confront the tension between the desire for purpose and the universe's indifference. It raises a question for life. Can we find meaning and fulfillment even with the work, when the work feels endless? And what does that teach us about embracing our own struggles? I find that in that, I just imagine that. I just imagine a man walking up a hill and doing that. And I think he asks us to imagine him happy. There's so much resistance to think that that man could ever be happy.
Yeah. You're talking about Albert Camus, right?
Yeah.
The philosopher. Yeah. He's inviting us to imagine he's happy. So what his perspective is on that topic is suffering and cycles and seasons and loops are inevitable. There is always going to be a journey and a battle, which is the uphill boulder. And so there's something about embracing where you're at. Viktor Frankl spoke about this after he came out of the Auschwitz camps and wrote, his manuscript on logotherapy. But essentially is that the last freedom that a man has is the ability to choose his attitude in any given moment, right? So there's always something about that last freedom when all is taken from a man. Like, you're in chains, you're in enslavement, essentially. The last freedom that no one can take from you is your ability to choose your attitude in any given moment. And so there's an inherent spiritual quality to that then that says that's your divinity right there, choosing, right? And so to choose to smile while pushing a boulder up a hill or in a concentration camp is like hacking the game. You're not meant to be happy. You're not meant to be satisfied with this. You're enslaved, essentially. You're suffering. So we're talking about from the perspective of nature, primality, all things responsive to instinct and reactivity to physical threats and things that are feeling bad. Your primal body is like, this is wrong. This is no good. Bad feelings are no good to feel. This is enslavement. To rise above that is what Albert Camus is saying, is like, well, watch what happens to the man that smiles during that task. There's like an acceptance of his fate. There is a freedom that opens up. Yeah, it does something to a person. Yeah, transcends the primality of the whole thing.
I think it's doing something difficult, and I think it's almost like there's a needing now of, when something's difficult, we need to know why it's happening. We need to know why we're going through this struggle. And I imagine the difficulty of imagining Sisyphus as happy is because we have a resistance to suffering without the immediate gratification of knowing how it's serving a greater purpose. I find in my own life, when you go through challenges, there's this, okay, I'm going through this, but it needs to serve this role. And I think it does. I think it does serve a role, and I think it plays a purpose. But I think that can also limit us too, because I think sometimes we don't endure more of what we need to go through. We limit ourselves through struggles because we're almost trying to extract ourselves out of the difficult time, take the paycheck from that experience, and then cash that in. But I think the more that I think about Sisyphus, the more it invites this opportunity to let go of the need and the primal aspect of our psychology to want to be certain of how this suffering is going to translate and transmute into something beneficial for our own lives.
Yeah, there's no faith in that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Then if you needed to know the outcomes for yourself to then take an action towards a task, you wouldn't do anything, essentially, because that's not the laws of this universe. This world that we're in, there is always going to be an unpredictability of your outcomes, and you're going to be pushed to a threshold where you know this seems to be the most meaningful thing you can do in this moment, and you have no idea if it's going to end in absolute destruction and chaos, potentially hurting other people as well that you're responsible for. But you know you have to do it anyway. You don't get to obfuscate responsibility. So that thing there is where it's like you have to have faith that whatever will be, and you don't get to know the outcomes. And I don't think if you design this life, you wouldn't want to have it any other way. To be brought to that precipice, that threshold of not knowing. That feeling like you're going to die. It's not an actual physical death, but it's like a big egoic type death of losing yourself, in rejection, failure, all the things that come with that. If you get it wrong and I just want to run away and not make this decision, it only requires faith. And that's why faith is the core tenet of spirituality or religion. Courage, faith, courage to act, faith that whatever happens will be as it's meant to be, and to not hold on to that outcome. So yeah, there's something about not needing to know the outcome for it to be worth my time. There is obviously, you don't be naive, based on the memories and abilities to conjure up some predictable pattern recognition in this world, just going to do anything and everything. There will always be something that says, okay, this seems to be meaningful, but it's me hopefully listening more to your heart. And trial and error has led me to this position where I know that if I fumble through this decision here, it'll lead to some kind of an adventure and reward of that, where it's like, I don't know what that'll look like, but the possibilities and opportunities that could unfold from that is worth the adventure,
Because sometimes we do prefer the familiar hell. So I think it's finding the nuance within that framework to understand, maybe connect more with our why. And then, we're going to go through a journey of uncertainty, and it's letting go of the certainty of how that's going to pay dividends, but within the confines of our purpose. Because I wouldn't want to apply this framework or this idea into my own life if I wasn't doing it directionally correct. Like I like this idea of being directionally correct with our purpose, because sometimes it's really hard to connect the dots, and I think that limits us too in the physical domain, because so many opportunities that we just aren't aware of that are calling us. So if we're directionally correct, for example, I could apply this to podcasting, right? If I continue to apply a series of episodes, high value guests, who knows where that path leads to exactly. Sometimes it is a tiring journey. It can be a relentless pursuit. The more that I need it to play out a certain way, the more I am controlled by it, and the less expansion I find there is in that. But there's this paradox where I find that if I push harder on the accelerator, I do get more outcomes, right? So it's this yin and this yang of applying the accelerator, but sort of allowing the freedom of life to unfold, because we're not as smart as we sometimes protect ourselves with. We create this idea that we're certain of how it's going to play out. I do it, but I think that's where I'm thinking practically. If we have a process for our life in our vision, if I have a process for my podcast, apply the process, but embrace life as something that is going to unfold in ways you can't even imagine. I think that allows us to reach a greater potential.
Mm-hmm. Remember the seasons in this world, man. You've got a time for harvesting. You've got a time for where the leaves are falling, cleaning things up. You got a time for contemplation, preparing the soil, winter. You got a time for seed planting, when do I take action? When do I apply the accelerator? These things are determined by natural laws that maybe we take for granted, but there is a time in your system, your ecosystem. You have seasons and cycles happening within your body and within this physical world that are telling you when your energy is going to be highest, when there's a time to apply certain things. So without needing to know the template of those things, just pay attention to the body. When you are in clarity, inspired, energized, and then maybe it scares you with some of those ideas, it's like, go. Use that energy, plant your seeds, right? Faith, courage, push. Everything you've learned, everything you hold is most true in this moment in the limited capacity that you know. Who cares? It's like, go fully, apply yourself fully into this thing unapologetically. Experience the hell out of that in the way that you can if you were to be fully courageous and fully faithful. Then the seasons will change, meaning it's like you've pressed into that experience to the degree that it's you are now finding resistances, or things are telling you to change, or there's no passage there anymore. It's like you're hitting the limitations of that season of push. And so there'll be a natural flow where it's like, okay, it's time for the contraction, as the seasons now go back around, time for leaves to fall. And so this is where the doing comes into the being again, and so it's now coming back towards the let the old ideas go, whatever that was about. You're going to go moving towards the reflection of the experience, understanding of what lessons do I need to learn from that push, from that thing there. And that's literally like the laws that govern that push and pull dynamic, or that accelerator versus not accelerator. And it'll be constant. And so that's the learning process, essentially. You'll keep tweaking things accordingly. So every season, that's time for planting, which is taking little actions that you don't really know what the outcome's going to be, but based on what you currently know and experienced in the past, this is the best I could do. I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go to that networking thing over there and meet those people there, or I'm going to call that person. Fuck it. And so in that moment, it's like, just apply faith. It inspires you. You like the vision of what that could become. Fumble through that fully is what the messaging usually is around that. And then when it's run its course, there'll be a natural settling. Okay, I've hit the next checkpoint. Where am I at? Take stock. Who was I that just did that? What kind of laws did I operate from? What kind of philosophies, beliefs did I operate from? What do I need to let go of?
I had this. Do you know when you get? You've obviously would have had this many times, but when someone's talking, you just get this like vision of this idea come to you. So I just had that then of like the seasons, right? And what I imagined was driving when we are on the accelerator, and there's this suffering, and it's a bit of a grind. I feel like we're going up this hill, like we're pushing up this hill. And then we're in that season of contraction. there's quite a lot of resistance because there's this illusion that we aren't going to continue pressing forward.
That's right.
But because we've gone up a hill, you can you don't have to go on the accelerator because you can go through that downhill. You've created all this reservoir of energy now that you can capitalize on. Because now if you're going up a hill and you're going down a contraction, you can utilize the momentum of gravity that you've created for yourself.
Free falling. Yeah.
That's what came to me, because I find that
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
I feel like I'm driving up the hill, right? Just left the ground going up the hill. That's the season I feel like I'm in, and it feels right. I mean, I had a period of contraction, like a little bit of time away from what I'm doing now. But for some reason, when I look back, I'm like, I don't understand why it's really easy to like create some sort of internal judgment around that. But I look back and sometimes you can look at cause and effect at this event, but then I'm like, looking back, it all makes so much sense with timings. And it's really weird because I feel like I want to be in control of things, right? But then it feels like sometimes I'm out of control.
As you should be. Yeah. There was that T-shirt. Say, you ever seen that T-shirt? It's like, do not fear, everything's out of control.
I want to get one of those shirts. That's gold.
Yeah, that's the humbling process where all philosophers eventually should get to. You know, that Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you know everything, you get that peak, that spike of like, yeah, I know so much, and you've got this confidence about you, but it's a naivety, you know, because you've learned something new, but then you have this peak, this crash. It's like, oh man, the more I learn now, I realize I know nothing, you know, and there's a humbling process through that, which is, letting go, and I'm actually out of control of a lot of the things in this world, and that's why there's a humbling process through the hero's journey, which is letting go of the things that you can't control. You don't get to control this world, which is Sisyphus. You know, the king in this is like, well, he tricks Zeus. He believes that I can bend the natural world. So that's why it's Zeus. That's why it's Persephone. That's why it's Thanatos. It's all these natural laws, the underworld, death itself, you know, creation. I can trick. I can use deceit, betrayal. I can use mental tricks to bend nature, fundamental law, to my will. That's the ego. So it's telling us about how this egoic part of us really believes we can trick ourselves into controlling the outcomes of this world. And it wants to believe that because it's safer that way. So the truth is it's scared of not having control. And what it does, it rejects the seasons of winter, let's say, the areas that are not comfortable, where I have to look at myself thoroughly. And so it's like someone trying to stay in the harvesting season. I'm always going to harvest. I'm going to keep pushing, and it's always going to be good. And if you have a down and then you got to push harder, it just means you're doing something wrong. It's like, well, watch those people burn out pretty quickly. Or eventually they get to this mountain of wealth, or let's say riches or status or money or material success because of their ability to push. Hey, nothing wrong with that. You chose that path, but there tends to be a quiet emptiness that all the people you thought that were going to be there at the end of that are not there anymore, because you've missed something fundamental. The wisdom that would have been found in your other seasons that you neglected, winter. Reflecting on yourself, checking your value hierarchy. Are the actions and the methods and approach that you're taking aligned with your highest value that in this world? Not really. And so that's why they are humbled too late. So it's like, honor your seasons, check in. Don't push too hard into one season just because it feels good. There's something about Sisyphus actually being humbled by nature. Go into your death, man. You took actions and you did things that would lead to this underworld, which is like us feeling guilt. You did some things that's made you feel guilty. Not because you deserve punishment, but that's how it's exaggerated in the myth. Is that it's you go to the underworld, Zeus says, I'll take you there for tricking Thanatos. You thought you could skip going to the underworld pretty much by tricking death itself and chaining him up. You remember how that's how it goes? Is like Thanatos is there to take him to the underworld pretty much to bring death upon Sisyphus. And Sisyphus like, yeah, hey man, you're telling me to get in these chains and do this thing here. I don't really understand it. Can you do it for me first, just to show me how it works? And then I'll get on with this whole chained and I'll be in the underworld. He tricks Thanatos into just being in the chains, and then he bails. And so he cheats death, but it's the depiction and metaphor of how the ego believes it can keep going, tricking nature or fundamental laws, seasons that you have to face. So it's like you've done things that lead to feelings of guilt because it's against your conscience. So you were given the laws of right and wrong within inherently in your body, a conscience to know whether you're deviating from your own personal soulful truth. And it's like you'll know if you're paying attention. And so that guilt or shame or whatever it is that you're feeling there will let you know. And if you don't go there, well, watch that manifest into something that you least wanted to manifest into. So there's something about taking stock, checking, getting on with the natural laws of like, hey, no, I need to go into my season now. Oh shit, there's a lot of guilt around that thing there. Now I just need to understand it, let it go, take the wisdom from that. Is that the kind of life that I want to experience? No, not really. So probably don't do that again. It's no higher law or God saying you did bad, you get punishment. It's you checking in with your own heart's calling. Is what I did aligned with what I want to inherently experience in this flesh? No. That's why the guilt exists. Okay, cool. It's letting me know I've deviated. That means now I can course correct. And you forgive yourself completely.
I find it so easy to confuse motion with progress. Like sometimes it feels like you're just running on the spot, and it's easy to convince yourself that that's exactly what's needed at that point in time. And it's analogous to driving a car, and you convince yourself because the car's going, even though you have all these signals, the light signals are coming on, the car's faltering, it's starting to break down. I'm still going, I'm getting there. Well, one, you might be burning out. Two, you might not be going in the right, you might not even be going in the right place. I remember so many times that I'm driving somewhere and you convince yourself that you're going the right way, even though there's like this deep thing where you're like, oh, I feel like I'm not going the right way. But it's like the sunk cost fallacy. You already like convince yourself that you're just going to stick that path out. And there is a tension between the overthink, and there's a lot of nuance in this one, but there is that you can really overthink something because it's really easy to trick yourself away from something that's meaningful for you because, like you said about your potential is the scariest thing.
Yeah.
So there is individual nuance there. The last thought experiment I wanted to get into, which I think wraps up the conversation interestingly, is Pascal's wager, which is this existential bet that we can have. Well, that's what I call it as, this existential bet. So Pascal's wager asks whether it is wiser to believe in God, given that belief could bring infinite reward, such as eternal life, while disbelief risks missing out on that reward entirely. The trade-off is simple. By believing, you may live a finite life with small sacrifices, but gain everything. By not believing, you may enjoy freedom now, but risk losing infinitely. The question it raises is believing in something good merely the smartest existential bet, or is faith more than a calculated choice?
I love this question and I love this topic. It's an old classic. And I haven't spent too much time in like a formal discussion or debate on it either, but something I've thought about. And it's just talking about, well, if there's no cost really to just believing in God, right? It's like, well, placing your bets on going to heaven or having some reward of spirituality. It's like at a basic primal level, it's like, well, I can get into the gates of heaven if I just believe and act accordingly. And there's no great loss otherwise. So we got to think about then why would a human not do that is probably where you would start that. Like, why not? If there's nothing to lose in just believing in God, and, if there is something after you get into the gates of heaven just by believing, then why wouldn't you do that? So then you would ask the atheist, or someone that doesn't want to believe in a God. There is something about maybe sounding stupid, sounding false. So there is people in this world that we need. I mean, that really will double down into needing things to be accurate and true, objectively, because there are laws of this fundamental physical world, and deviate from the fundamental laws of the physical world, Newtonian physics, let's say, you pay the price. You jump off a bridge, you're going to go downwards. So it's like there are laws here that you need to pay attention to. And so there is this beautiful design where some people are really, really doubling down into objective truth. They would be the atheist, someone that may not subscribe to something that cannot be quantifiable, because there's an excessive prioritization of the physical domain and the five senses in which we can perceive. Obviously, I think it's to do with a fundamental flaw in the way we've chosen to go about science. But let's just say that there is a necessity to pay attention to the physical laws. But there is a fear of being ridiculed because of the way we approach science as well. So there's this I don't want to sound like an idiot. I don't want to sound crazy. I don't want to be the guy that we've condemned, the conspiracy theorist. We've done a good job to really alienate someone that tries to deviate from an objective truth. And so partly because of that, there's a denial of the phenomenal world, the things that are quite subjective, that are hard to explain, the ineffable, right? Because what have we done with, say, DSM-5? It has to be based on normal psychology and abnormal psychology. And what is abnormal psychology? That which is deviant or confronting, dysfunctional for social coherence, right? Your ability to relate to another, right? And if it's dysfunctional, it's not functioning in a social setting, then it's pathologized because you can't relate to another. If a room of 10 people, 9 of them see nothing, let's say they just see the physical, one person sees a ghost. I see there's a figure standing there. Well, 9 can't see it. That determines truth. DSM-5, what is hallucinations? They are seeing things that others cannot.
So do you think there's a series of false equivalences between abnormal behavior and things that might be true, but because they're in the minority?
Yes, because others can't objectively validate it. So it goes into the category of false, and it then becomes what? Uncomfortable for others, dysfunctional, abnormal. It's not normal. And so because of these titles and the way we've approached it, and we've alienated those essentially that are sensing or feeling things that are subjective, that have quality. That's what we've learned because of all this parapsychological studies that I've done and what we have in the world. Yeah, it's an essential quality to it, and there is value in the psychic phenomena or the psi phenomenon, ESP, extrasensory perception, but we haven't allowed it to be valuable or worthy of exploration because of its inability to be repeatable, or understood by others, let's say, in its quality. So anyway, that's how we've created this alienating separation from the phenomenal world. And so I think that's why I'm coming back right to the why not believing God as well. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to go down into something that is not valuable or true. And I'm sensitive to that. And so I think there is a necessity because we don't just want to all fall into something that just...
Do you think that that's the number one reason? I think, I hear a lot of people are atheists because of the suffering, but I've heard a lot of arguments about non-human suffering as well, for animals and stuff like that.
Yeah, that I think is a naivety. That's not even to do with truth about a God. I think this is maybe a bit more harsh, but I think if you just listen to that, well, if there is a God, why is there children born with cancer? Why is there this? Why? If there is a good God, but see, a good God, you're assuming that, again, the first topic we spoke about is pro-social behavior, people just feeling good. It's a utopian idea. It's a fantasy. So it's a childlike, infantile assumption of what the world should be if it was a good place, if it was the right place, right? If it was a right, good, but that's not the God that's explained, inherently in spirituality. Duality of light and dark, the fact that virtue is honesty and honesty can make someone commit suicide into darkness. So your virtue can lead to darkness. Darkness is inherent, essentially. Sun, moon, the dark and light. It's like, no, there is going to be darkness in this world. And it's not, and we spoke about the hero's journey. What makes something so meaningful and inspiring is someone's ability to go into their suffering and make light out of it, in some way. So it's not that.
Do you think that that's a reasonable justification for, let's say, take the cancer example, right? Let's say the parents of that. How would they interpret that? If that was the explanation given to them, right? Like there would obviously be incredible resistance.
Why? And why would there be resistance?
Because they're suffering at the hands of something that's meant to be all loving, all powerful.
Yeah, exactly. So they're assuming that because something would be loving and all powerful, it shouldn't be giving me bad feelings. It's infantile a little bit, It's like you're assuming that for this place to be all good and an all loving God, that you shouldn't feel negative feelings. There shouldn't be suffering. That's the assumption. There shouldn't be suffering. But that's not what this world is really about. The fact that you're human, remember the four givens of existence. You're in a world where you're going to die and you're going to be aware of that. That's going to create tremendous anxiety. You're going to have the freedom to choose left or right, and you're going to get that wrong many times, and it'll always fall on you to take that responsibility. And you're going to wish that you can obfuscate that responsibility to someone else, because it's going to create tremendous anxiety to choose left or right and get it inherently wrong and hurt people. You're going to have to be fending off against isolation. You have to try to get people to love you, to have a sense of belongingness, which means your subjective views and the way you are has to be tweaked and adapted to have a sense of belonging with people. So you have to try get people to love you, So these ideas inherently create suffering just by being in this world. So you can't, if you still have this utopian idea, this fantasy that life is supposed to be without suffering, then you're going to couple that with an all-loving religious God in that same sense. If you're saying there is an all-loving God, you're going to put it with that all should be just pleasure in a good world. That's not it. An all-loving God would fundamentally understand that your fulfillment and meaning in this world is from what you do within the suffering. And so there's something about taking on your task of suffering and darkness and difficulty in a noble way, an honorable way. So yes, it sucks. Yes, things don't feel good in this world, and there's different spectrum of how bad it can be. But suffering, we can agree, I don't see any problem with that. Yeah, it's an inherent quality of needing to be here on this earth and picking up your load and moving it. Yeah. Therefore, I don't think it's much of an argument for me personally that, yeah, if it was an all-loving God, there shouldn't be suffering.
Is there a prerequisite experience or knowing that someone has to have around God? Because I find that you can easily intellectualize the benefits in this of believing in God, right? There's little cost, there's massive upside. It serves as this peace, support, this belief in a hidden order in the world. The upsides are so much bigger than the downsides. So it's easy to arrive at a logical conclusion that I should believe in God because it will serve a beneficial role in my life. Now, what's the difference between believing in God through an intellectual lens versus having genuine faith? And how would someone discern the difference between the two?
Okay, good question, man. Let's take a religious person going to church every Sunday, doing their thing, ticking the boxes. Yeah, but there is a judgment to others that are not going to church, a condemnation of others that are not doing the Christian thing. And maybe when they go back home, they start gossiping about the people that were wearing a certain thing or not paying attention or some judgment, and it's gossipy. What they're doing essentially is acting out the belief in God, the practice of what looks like faith or devotion to God, but it's a surface dressed up version of it. It's deviant from spirituality. Why? Is because they are swimming in the chemistry and actions of indifference, condemnation, judgment of others. Essentially, there is no love in that. Spirituality is about love, right? And so you are not acting actually in accordance with spiritual or as if God is real. If God is believed and you believe that God is real and all of its, say, just take Christianity, but the beliefs of Christianity, then you wouldn't be going home and judging all these things and while acting out the surface of it. You haven't quite got the idea of it yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think it's not just about a series of behaviors checking a box, but how would someone...
You can't fake it.
Yeah.
You don't. That's why I say God sees all. Again, it's another way of just saying your conscience sees all. You know, the inherent, ultimate, truest voice in you knows you're lying. It knows there's something off because there's this yuckiness and, you know, this discomfort about yourself and the world when you're gossiping, when you're judging others. It's like things aren't really happening in a smooth way. Life isn't as relaxed and peaceful as you expected it to be if you're in faith, you know, acting out your Christian values. So it's like you'll know God sees all. That's you. You know you're lying. You know you're out of truth by just dressing up in the Christian costume or any faithful costume, an Islamic costume. And it's like while saying I'm doing this detestable action of judgment and violence to this person in honor of God, it's like good luck. Yeah, because that's not how it goes. You know, to use the Islamic faith, to kill the infidels, you know, is part of the task. It's written in the Quran. Well, what does that mean? I don't know if I'm allowed to really interpret for them, but what I understand is that the infidels aren't just those that are not believing Islam. It's more about those ideas, so the thought signatures, whether it's in another person or within themselves, all things that are deviate from God, from truth, from faith, which is the virtues. So the virtues are all things that are in line with love. And so the infidels would be all things like judgment, indifference, gossip, jealousy, the 7 deadly sins essentially, are the infidels, viruses of the mind, things that take you away from God. To kill them is to rid yourself of the viruses of the mind, you know, punishment, judgment, indifference, all that stuff, resentfulness, bitterness. That's the point, is to rid yourself of those things. So it's a chemical signature. It's a feeling. It's a way of being in the world. And it doesn't matter what you dress up as or how many times you go to church. The kingdom of heaven is brought on earth through virtue, the chemistry and the actions and behaviors of virtue, honesty. And so that's why when someone's embodied, it's like this person doesn't need to call themselves anything. You feel that the light of God is within them, or the light of truth. There is something inherently true about this person. It's felt. It transcends religious practice. So that's why you can't fake it. Yeah.
Do you think something tangibly happens in someone's life when they decide to start believing on God? Or do you think it's less of a decision that they consciously choose and it's more thrust upon them through some experience? So like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like they don't arrive to the conclusion of God is real. It's sort of like an inner knowing and it comes to them, and they don't they don't come there through a series of calculations. It's more an ethereal.
What I would refer to then, to keep it simple, is to look at the hero's journey, the 12 stages of the hero's journey, the archetypal hero's journey. You'll see a moment where the hero has to go out into the wilderness, out into the shadow realms, where they have to face the dragons or the dark things that lurk in the shadows, and they realize they can't swing their sword at it. There is a humbling process on that pilgrimage. And that's why, to be worthy for the warrior or the prince, to be worthy of kingship, to be the wise king, you don't just get given that position because you've slain all these people in battle, you've taken all the lands, and you've got all these trophies, essentially. These are surface, egoic successes. But to be the wise king, you had to have been humbled by natural law, right? And so there's a virtue that the wise king has, and that's why when you look at the movies, the wise king is this grounded, humble, powerful, has a warrior instinct, but is grounded. And there's always a spiritual connection to the sage or the wizard or someone that connects them to their God, essentially, but it's integrated. The tyrannical king keeps the religious or the spiritual components far away. They condemn it because they believe in I control everything. The tyrannical king, right? Because they haven't gone through the pilgrimage. So here it is. On the pilgrimage, there is a moment where you are humbled by the natural laws or the things that are out of your control. We spoke about there are times where I'm in control and times I feel like I'm in no control. In the times where you have no control, times where you're at your worst, you've lost control. Everything you thought was gonna happen in a successful way because you applied these methods, these actions. You were told, I did everything I was supposed to, and it didn't lead to the success. It didn't lead to everyone happily ever after. You were left alone, abandoned, rejected. In that moment where everything's stripped away from you, that's usually where someone finds some spiritual practice or some connection to something more. Something whispers to them. It's usually close to death, close to the thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. This game's too hard. Something in them compels them. And they will often talk about hearing a voice, whether it's an angel or a mother or a God or Jesus or a Buddha. Something whispers to them, and it's a voice of encouragement, a voice of love. And then what will happen is a bunch of synchronicities. So there's another dimension where things that are so unpredictable and uncanny, that seem so out of this world, coincidental, it just lines up in a way that just makes you raise an eyebrow. And it's like, this is almost too intelligent design based on where I'm at, that the way it's now unfolding, for it to be just random, an unconscious universe. Something seems conscious here. It's intelligently designed based on what my heart's doing. It's not operating based on what I'm manipulating through words, actions. It's something that it's as if it knows what's swimming in here, the ineffable, the thing that I can't articulate. The world around me is sort of meeting me in a way that I most need in this moment, and it seems too magical and intelligent. That's when this is one way people start to then humble themselves to an intelligent, overseeing thing. And it's not the man in the sky, more about a universal, fundamental law that's intelligent, that understands you more than you understand yourself.
Yeah.
God.
There's plenty more to get into there, but where can we go to find more of your work if we want to hear more from you?
I think, these little clips on Instagram are pretty good. People like to just listen to that if they want to listen to some stuff there. That's at Boris Walter Official. I'm going to have a whole website rebranding, but I think it'll stay under the domain of boriswalter.com. It'll offer just the one-on-one services. I still offer 1.5 days a week for the general public if they want to experience 1 hour or 3 hours with me. It might be hypnosis, could ask me questions. It's just spend the time as you wish. Some people just want to tell me life stories, things that they've gone through. They want my perspective on something or just want me to listen. So that's still available to the general public all around the world. Otherwise, there is boriswaltercic.com, and that's for the corporate side that we spoke about earlier, leadership teams, CEOs, leaders that are sort of at the precipice of wanting to integrate more humanistic, spiritual, transcendental concepts and ideas into a leadership team to evolve them in a way that's more coherent, more grounded, more honest, communication flowing. And so I've been working with a few corporate teams now, and I'm still open to that. Got an awesome bunch of guys working with me now that we're just having fun. You can also just contact me through there as well.
Epic. Boris, thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for listening to the episode. I hope you got a ton of value out of our guest today. Now, if you enjoyed that episode, don't forget to click the follow button on Spotify and also click the 3 dots and click rate show. Makes a massive difference in helping grow the show and bring on even bigger guests. And also, if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It does make a massive difference. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.